Thank you. I feel like I don't need to read anymore. Everything's been said. Yeah, I'm going to start with a translation, an open translation of a poem by Garcia Lorca. It's la canción del muchacho de siete corazones. Yeah, it's the song of the man with seven hearts. It's very open translation. I have seven hearts, but I can't find my own. I collide with the wind in the bush. I'm carried in the mirrors of seven women. I've sung for the world with my mouth of seven petals. My bloody red galleons dissolving without oars or rigging. I've lived the geographies of other people. I never realized my throat's secrets had escaped. In the bush, my heart, a star's album, echoes, star. The wind and I keep bumping into one another. Siete corazones tengo, pero el mío no lo encuentro. So that's me out of the way. You know everything about me now. What I'm going to do now is fulfill my role as an Australian poet and read you poems set in the outback of Australia. It's what you're expecting, right? So these poems are actually set in the outback of Australia. Well, not really the outback, it's sort of the northwest of the country. This photo on my book is from the region in which these poems are set. There's a reason for this. They deal with a particular region centred around a town called Broome, and Broome, I've spent a lot of time there, sort of ethno-poetic interests, research interests. It's really important Aboriginal culture around Broome that I spent time with those guys. And for me, Broome is interesting because it's like a microcosm of the entire country in that it's like this, it's a town, it's a very well developed kind of tourist town on the edge of this kind of enormous expanse, which is incredibly rich with myriad diverse Aboriginal cultures, all of which have really different relationships to colonialism. So it interests me as a kind of little microcosm of Australia as a whole. So this first poem is a long poem in 5 parts, and I'm going to indicate each part with a pause, and it's called Broome Song. It's about Broome. Broome Song. And he said, "Sing to me my heartbeat, sing to me my heartbeat, we're languishing in Broome time, laughing all the logic, rolling over pavements, cracking up the ecologies, the thickening Broome wick burns, the thickening pavement blood." And he said, they came. Say Australia from the edges of a wound, a circus of dusty blood sucked from a metal carcass in Minya's old heart, the softly burning horizon screaming as if a mineral old candle had coagulated around the wooden boats of enlightenment and flared up above us the dancing phantoms of the flaming place-time scrub. And he said they came from the water in spirit form. They came in spirit form, from deep within us it began, from deeper within us than the guerrilla libido. The open horizon laughed, and the throat snaked into the long black. The longing romantics on the coasts, they came from the ocean, kept coming from the ocean, but that first vowel, always that first vowel, rolling out, smudging seconds, reverberating with amnesia, with the shining cities of our limbs. So the dreaming blacksmith and a war memorial stench of rusting cannons, always the blacksmith, the cannons, the curling timbers of floating dreams, collecting like wasps in Roebuck Bay. We grow on the multiplicity of metaphor. What if each new festival were a dance upon a wound, and our cities were built with a dark, bloody mortar? If you wrote this down, you'd crack branches. If you let it rumble out, you'd have the seabirds singing, you'd have the sea eagles nibbling at clockwork. What if each new festival were a dance on the rust, flakes of rust around the moon's white mouth? Came from the water in spirit form, sprayed from the gatherings, leaving the dry chatter of countless leaves over hard earth, returning to their cumulative enactment, poetics of building, car, space, all tumbling over one another, mistletoe masses masculating, thirsty shadows growing at sunset, Dark fingers across the lawns, shooting off, steaming off like song they came from the ocean, shifting under memory's weight, the pastoral muscle descending into sinew. The vernacular republic was an old clump of buffel grass, drying out. Up grew tough wattle musculature, acacia fibres wrapped by sky's boiling skin. Give me the tumbling histories of the wind, a million feet caked in mud of burnt mandarin, raining ribbons, pasture floating softer than sea. Say rivers of black ink sucked up in sunlight, throat-sucking song from a waterhole's nugget density. Say pen, flood, cumulus, humid melody and lightning time. Now they're pointing the shadow fingers, the new flesh limbs, pointing east with the momentum of geology. If the whole world might melt into it, melding to horizons, crinkling epidermis, so that the whole world might re-emerge, in tongues bursting like pandanus, the aching past sinking into a bleeding spring, bubbling up, seething the ochre plain mirage. Okay, this next poem, it's written after a fairly iconic Australian poet. Iconic because he has a really distinctive line and a really distinctive kind of conversational meter. And he was also quite a conservative poet. You know, he was a rural poet and had quite conservative opinions about Australian history and politics. But I've written after this poet. I've taken this poet as a word to an entirely different place and written a poem in imitation of him. This is called Out with Franz. Franz was Dutch once, but after spending a lot of time here in Broome, the old fella decided to give him the law. He took us up through some of the country, pointing out plants and places of interest. We sped at 1:30 along a dusty red road, gloved by burnt scrub, to burst out onto the coast, stupid, sheer blue everywhere. Franz told us to walk down the beach a bit. About a K, he said. That's a kilometre. About a K, he said. He'd drive on and meet us where the red cliffs turned into sand dunes. After 2 Ks at least, the white sand burning your eyes out, we saw the red rock beside us start to sink into the ground and the big dunes rise up, with a few tufts of this and that on top. There was a little beach. Some of us undressed and wandered into the water. I turned to see Franz's relief striding down the chest of a dune. It can be hard to think of this sort of thing as paradisical. You can worry a lot about fresh water, or how long it will be until you can get back to shade. You think of what they say about skin cancer too. The sun's always there, beating down. I joined the others in the ocean. Franz lay down on the sand, took off his sandals and put them under his head. For a white fella, he didn't seem to burn much. I swam out for a bit and caught a small wave in. All that heat and stress I'd felt earlier had been washed off. I pointed to the blood red of the cliffs. Franz said they were a big quarry once where people got paint and good rock. When everyone was out of the water, we followed him through a valley between the dunes. Around our feet were scattered thousands of pieces of chipped, sparkling shells and thin teeth of stone. It was here, he told us, over 30 of the tribe had been shot by paranoid explorers. Over the other side of that dune was the burial ground. He couldn't camp there. This was a better place to sleep. Stop, he cried, his hands out. At his feet, 2 eggs like small marbles, resting on a simple patio of broken white shell. It was the oyster catcher's nest. Then, further on, circles of grey ash in the sand. During lunch, back behind the dunes, someone asked him why the massacre wasn't mentioned on the tourist information boards. They don't want to give the young people any more reason to be angry, he said. This is called Litchfield Shout. It's written about a famous national park in that, sort of not really near Broome at all, but it's kind of in the top end of Australia. But it's, you know, you might go there to kind of think you're going to get this kind of prototypical wilderness experience, but if you go to some of the main areas, it's like a completely cosmopolitan one, because there are people from all over the world kind of, you know, chatting and taking photos and This is called Litchfield Shout. Grab your paints, your dreams, we'll shape them down. Your Litchfield dreamings fly across pandanus greens, exploding the drips of dark trunk run. Here we are, the deep red splash, in out bark drips, cracking open the cumulus heart. Pumping out from Darwin, stumbling from the floods of a half-cast tin mine. Take it up, scoop it up, splashing 10 stories of wilderness lust like pieces of lush community, the monsoonal cavities of your pristine teeth. We're out there now, out here playing it out. The gentle goanna dawdle, hearty prado laugh. In we go, go, streams pool the dark colours, stroke a black one hard behind the road. Watch for those ochre fringes, these clouds swallowed up. We all swallowed too much. It's a little bird, what type, no idea. It's a shadow stretching thin, dreaming out, dreaming in. Your hands, a precious bowl. Pour a song, right with feathers, pour it from within. The soft down sewing cobalt pillows, the flying sky, always slumber, always safe. We're slipping sex, your rubber on the Duco, Crocs gone igneous and slipping, slipping. We're slipping south to steal the colder flow. This poem is called Darwin Entropy. If you don't know where Darwin is, look at a map. Sorry. Darwin Entropy. The descent was like a glass bubble burst over an evening. The descent was like a glass bubble burst over an evening from a Robert Huss poem, written after some weeks in the top end. Late dry season, dining with a woman without her name, thinking back to California, a glass of crisp Chardonnay sweating in his hand. Heat has wrapped around his tongue, and a penumbra is sliding across the water in slow, edible chunks. Heat, hot wind, sweat, all those Darwin pieces, light broken up, the city sliced kaleidoscopically. Heat, sinking, they peck at conversation spaces, because words would burst out, then hurriedly rust in that humidity. They cover Europe before joking about Bruce Chatwin, and the words, always hovering within those hard lines. They move out to the balcony, an Arnhem Land song, a shift from reason to ritual. She laughs and turns to the sunset, that sinking, burning eye. Really interesting work's been done in the West, she says, but he's restless. He's shrugging off the ethics and reaching for his camera. Old work. He catches a swirl of red and tangerine on his screen, and again, now with better composition. He can't see the point of turning their songs into objects of study. Look what it did to ours. He watches as the words cut loose, their sharp crystal sounds. Candlelight inflames what remains of her skin. Here, like pinpricks or like silicon plugs. Disjunctive, ionic lines. But I watched her go inwards before the outbursts of a wick held fast within a stick of wax. These days, so many of my poems begin with words like dawn or now, as if my life has become a series of scenes, Hassian, separated by cuts, but each one reminiscent of the other. Australia, I thought to myself and looked back at her. Australia, burning up. We were sweating by the cooling glass of the Arafura Sea, and it seemed to me that each one of my poems, each one might end with the following beginning, finally. I'll just read one more with the last poem in this book and then a couple of newer ones. This is called Pernalulu Wandering. Pernalulu is the name of the Aboriginal name of the national park. Again, same sort of general region of the country. Begins though with a quote from a really important Australian poet, Robert Adamson, the contemporary poet. Bit old though now, but this is one of his, I think one of his best poems. The quote I've taken from the poem called Silver, and the it's not the last lines of the poem. I can't remember actually. Anyway, the quote is, "Australia we sobbed through the paperbark songs to birds and gentle animals, and to the soft-stepping people of its riverbanks." It's just a quote from the poem. Pernalulu Wandering. In your rivers of sand, these frozen oceans of salt, silicate crust of earth, My heels break crust with each step. I crush sticks, dried leaves hidden beneath. I sink and wade through sandstone, pink riverbed. Outside, the wind throws fresh the loose, the grains of sand across spinifex, stinging hiss and wattle cry. Some bird I won't, should see, but can't. Fire memories shimmer, dormant tongue, in your rumours of ants, rock red, apricot, termites mound, cooked flesh, fires lick past, withered spinifex, limp puffing, ash and dusty black shoes, rivers of sand, heaped tracks, dung of crushed rocks, your things, brilliant things. Okay, I'll just do one more actually. It's getting a bit late. I'm just going to change that. This has nothing to do with any of that. It's just a more recent poem about a valley in Chile, which I really love. It's a really special place to me. It's called Valle del Hurtado, and it's kind of like these really dramatic, enormous peaks, but it's very quite barren country, so they're just the yellow peaks that rise into a very dry blue sky, but they're these very fertile green valleys. So it's sort of an extremely contrasting and dramatic sort of area. I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. Sort of in the middle north of the country. Yeah, so it's just called Valle del Hurtado. There's a little section in it in Spanish which is from, I should explain. It's from a poem by Neruda called Como era España, like the way Spain was, from one of his Residence on Earth books, the third one. And he's writing about Spain in this particular way, about this, as this country with this dry, desiccated earth and, all these poor homes and everything. So I'm referencing that as I'm thinking about this place. Open country like Spain was, diurno, tambor de son opaco, a hard dermis fused with mineral intelligence, with delicate vineyards, where small homes of clay and wood struggle with the heat's rock weight. Spain was strangled by the language of desiccated pasture, but these burly mountains condensed into nebulae, grasped, dressed and undressed themselves in slender shadows, rose to the challenge of a blue, boiling canvas, then failed. Each one failed, their crumbling, exhausted bonds, their hard, compacted flesh tumbling down valleys, destroying cacti, scents, never resting, until their thunderous fists smashed bone, pulverized a perilous, those tactile temples and their gardens demolished by a cool, impervious mood. These bold mountains remain the wisest. Their acrid soils slide through the seasons, shirking the heavy text of forests, of cumbersome timber, of carbon's wearying routines. They lie across the sun like gods of the stone they cradle, like signs too faint to breathe words. They're strong and agile as tongues. They descend into a single wet throat, down to the mad populace of the rapids, the willows and the bamboos draping, the swirling pollen in dark bivouacs, the flames of light in leaves, where all sounds reduced to a pure molten sign, the vowels of the wind, the ochre songs, the paper-thin voices, the needle calls, all sound wrapped up in gurgling consonants, all sound reduced to the idea of bursting, burnt xanthus bursting from throats in midsummer, in harsh light, in the cruel evolution of copper, in the windy spirits of 1 million minds. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I really want to thank our poets tonight. Let's thank Stuart Cooke,